Hi. Please don't be fooled by what you've just seen. Our garden doesn't always look as nice as this. You see, the problem with any garden is that the flowers never all bloom at the same time, so what you've just seen are shots that were taken over quite a few months. But a garden is more than just a mere collection of beautiful flowers, trees and shrubs. A garden is actually an ecological unit that provides a home for all kinds of smaller animals and insects. And of course there are always the birds. Many different species have been with us ever since people first started maintaining their own gardens. Driven from an environment with many predators, birds somehow discovered that safety as well as food could be found near human beings. Likewise, many people enjoy the company of birds, and some have gone to great lengths to welcome birds into their gardens. But during the last 20 years, a strange phenomenon has taken place. There has been an influx of a great number of birds normally associated with typical bushveld areas. Birds that had never been seen in our gardens before suddenly became extremely common, and from all over Johannesburg reports are coming in from people seeing unusual birds in the gardens. We don't have to look far to find a reason for this. The area around Johannesburg, its adjoining suburbs and smaller towns, has been described as the largest man-made forest in the world. Looking down from a high vantage point, it is easy to see why. As more and more people settled in the ever-expanding area, they took pride in their gardens, and the many trees they planted eventually formed this immense forest. Slowly the typical high-veld grasslands are giving way as this forest expands towards the more subtropical regions. And sometimes we get some very unusual visitors and some amazing happenings in our gardens. Like the time when my son decided to hang up a nesting log to attract some black-collared barbets. He placed the log on a chair and looked up into the tree to decide on the suitable branch to hang it. While he was busy making up his mind, he noticed that the barbets had already started excavating the nesting entrance while the log was still on the chair. Here is an unusual visitor. It's a worm snake, a blind snake that lives underground and feeds on worms and centipedes. Sometimes after heavy rains, it comes to the surface. A strange event takes place every year around December. At this time, countless millions of white butterflies migrate in a northeasterly direction and pass through our gardens. They appear to originate in the Karoo and the Kalahari, but no one knows what happens to them eventually, why they migrate, and how they manage to navigate. The sound that we often hear on a summer night, a strange song that seems to come out of the ground. The singer is a very common garden visitor known as the mole cricket. It gets its name from its front legs, which are powerful like those of a mole. The mole cricket is unique in that the male constructs a tunnel, shaped almost on the principle of a modern loudspeaker. From inside this tunnel, he sings this love song to attract the female. The sound is magnified many times and can be heard more than a kilometer away. It is said to be the loudest noise made by an insect. This reed cormorant visited our fish pond regularly for 3 days, helped himself to some of my indigenous fish, and then disappeared. I don't know why he turned his back on a loving family and plenty of food. If for some reason I need to drop the water level in the pond, this hamerkop comes to see if there is anything to eat. I don't want him in my garden. The ring-necked parakeet is fast becoming one of our common garden birds. Originally from India, this species is extending its range to countries all over the world, including South Africa. Large populations are establishing themselves in Johannesburg, Durban, Cape Town, and other cities. It is believed that these populations are started by escapees and introduced individuals. In England, they have become so numerous that there is talk that they may have to be culled. The problem is that they may become agricultural pests and also a danger to the local bird population. Here we see the male on the right and the female on the left. Ring-necked parakeets are very adaptable. Being used to the cold weather in the foothills of the Himalayas, they have no problem withstanding winter conditions in Europe. Here in South Africa, they also breed during the winter months. The park across the road from us has its own bird population. Every year the crowned lapwing makes several attempts to raise a family. It's not easy with people walking dogs, children on bicycles, and teenagers playing soccer. The blacksmith lapwing is often seen, but doesn't breed here. The wattled lapwing is another regular visitor. The spotted thickney is nocturnal. Hiding in the daytime, it comes out at night. Its large eyes are specially adapted to see in the dark. Cattle egrets also feel quite at home here. And let's not forget the African hoopoe. Whenever I see a congregation of birds like this, I know that the nuptial flight of the termites is taking place. At certain times during the year, the virgin queens fly out to mate with the virgin males. Afterwards, they will land on the ground and start a new colony. For the local birds, they provide an absolute feast. A pair of African hoopoes have been breeding in our roof for quite a few years and managed to raise quite a few broods. We've always enjoyed watching the parent birds flying to the nest and feeding the ever-hungry chicks. But in December 2000, we noticed that they were no longer feeding the chicks at the entrance to the nest, but this time right inside the roof, deep inside the roof, right above our beds. And the noise was sometimes terrible. It sometimes sounded like the hoopers were fighting with the rats. I decided to go and have a look, and I climbed up the ladder to the opening of the roof. As I put my head through the hatch, I heard this terrible noise as if all the hoopoe chicks were calling at the same time. When I moved closer, I saw that there were no hoopoe chicks, but that the noise was made by only one little bird, a very unusual visitor, the greater honey guide. Like a cuckoo, this parasite lays its eggs in other birds' nests, but always chooses birds that nest in holes in trees, or, as in this case, my roof. Obviously, it had killed the hoopoe's chicks or broken its eggs, and it was now driving the parent hoopoes into a feeding frenzy. But what I couldn't understand is why did the hoopoes feed the chick, the honey guide chick, in the middle of the roof and not at the entrance of the nest? I happened to mention this to a friend of mine, Mike Reed, who, together with his brother Julian, runs a tree felling business. And as a sideline, they manufacture breeding logs for birds. And he came up with the answer.
We had a pair of crested barbets nesting in the garden, and the greater honey guide came and parasitized the nests. As the chick grew, it started putting its head out the entrance, and we noticed that every time it came to the entrance, the crested barbet came and pecked its head. We were a bit mystified initially, but we came to the conclusion that the crested barbet was actually recognizing the greater honey guide as one of its enemy, and consequently was pecking it. And only when the honey guide went down deep into the hole did the crested barbet leave its head alone and start feeding it. So my conclusion to this is the possibility that the greater honey guide has actually got to be in the dark, otherwise the crested barbet, the host bird, will recognize it and eventually kill it.
The honey guide stayed with us for at least 43 days, which is a very long fledgling period. Eventually he moved to the other side of the house, where he drove the hoopoes crazy with his incessant begging for food. And one day he was gone, much to the consternation of the hoopoes, who kept bringing food for a while, but there was no one to feed. So there you are, a typical bushveld bird, the greater honey guide, here in my garden in Randburg. I'd never seen or heard this bird in this area before, and here it was parasitizing my African hoopoes. Who knows what surprises this man-made forest still holds for us. But one thing is certain, an awareness of what goes on in the natural world around us can make gardening so much more enjoyable.